Life is full of surprises, betrayals, regrets, changes. Here are 3 real-life stories. Leave a comment and tell us which one you liked the most. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now, let me tell you. Isabella thought she had found her forever in Noah. She saw the steady hand of commitment, the warm voice of loyalty, the partner she had longed for through seasons of disappointment. For 2 years, their relationship unfolded like a perfect script. Weekend getaways, family holidays, soft promises shared under the glow of city lights. And when the whispers of a proposal began to stir, no one doubted what was coming next. Least of all, Isabella. The day arrived with cinematic precision. A candlelit rooftop, their song playing in the background, and a ring box that shimmered under the stars. Noah knelt, said the words she'd always hoped to hear, and slipped the ring onto her finger. Friends applauded from the shadows, champagne flowed, and flashbulbs immortalized the moment. On the surface, it was flawless, but perfection can be a dangerous mask. Days after the proposal, Isabella's sister sent her a screenshot. It was a photo, one that had quietly made its way onto social media before being hastily deleted. The picture showed the same ring on a different woman's hand, dated months earlier. The caption read, "The beginning of forever," followed by a heart emoji and Noah's username tagged beneath it. At first, Isabella thought it had to be a mistake, a joke, or maybe an old post Noah had been tagged in without his knowledge. But curiosity gave way to dread as she scrolled deeper. The woman's profile was private, but her name was familiar. A friend of a friend, someone Isabella had met briefly whose presence now felt like a thread unraveling the fabric of her engagement. She confronted the situation not with rage, but with method. Quietly, she began to ask questions, to mutual acquaintances, to coworkers who had known Noah longer than she had. And slowly, the truth emerged. The proposal wasn't just recycled. It had been rehearsed before. Same speech, same venue, same ring. Noah had been engaged before, to a woman he'd described to Isabella as a short-term ex. But their breakup hadn't been clean. It hadn't even been final. When Isabella entered the picture, there had been overlap, weeks, maybe months. And the ring? It hadn't been purchased for her, it had simply been repurposed. The scandal broke silently, not with a shout, but with the weight of realization. The man she believed was building a future had been busy burying a past, one that refused to stay hidden. And now, the symbol of his love sat on her finger like a lie cast in gold. Isabella didn't end the engagement immediately. Instead, she watched Noah carefully, testing not just his words, but the spaces between them. She wanted to see who he truly was without the script. Because sometimes, the most painful truth isn't in the betrayal itself, but in how someone chooses to explain it. And deep down, she feared the worst was still to come. Beneath the glittering veneer of an engagement, Isabella was unraveling. The ring on her finger no longer symbolized love. It had become an artifact of deception. And yet she kept it there, a silent reminder of the question she couldn't stop asking. Had she ever truly known Noah? As the days passed, Noah seemed unchanged. He planned wedding details, posted celebratory messages, and smiled through dinners with family. To everyone else, he was the perfect fiancé. But to Isabella, every action now held a double meaning. His charm felt rehearsed, his enthusiasm forced. She began to notice the small slips, mentions of restaurants they had never visited, stories with unfamiliar timelines, and the way he dodged questions about his past relationship. Isabella needed more than suspicions. She needed proof. Late one night after Noah had fallen asleep, she went through his phone. It wasn't a decision she took lightly, but trust, once fractured, leaves little room for restraint. What she found was more than she expected. The deleted messages were still partially retrievable. Conversations with his ex-fiancée, warm, recent, and painfully intimate, were still there, hidden beneath layers of digital erasure. The breakup hadn't been final when he proposed to Isabella. In fact, it hadn't happened at all. Noah had been maintaining two lives, juggling affection and commitment like a man playing a cruel game. His proposal to Isabella hadn't been a fresh start, it had been an escape route, and she had unknowingly walked straight into it. The next morning, she didn't confront him. She didn't cry or scream. Instead, she returned the ring to its velvet box and placed it on the kitchen table. Then she left. Over the following weeks, whispers spread among friends and family. Noah's version of the story painted Isabella as impulsive, sensitive, unwilling to communicate. But she stayed silent. She didn't owe anyone an explanation, not when the truth sat so plainly before her. The weight of betrayal was enough without adding the burden of public defense. For Isabella, the healing came slowly. Trust, once shattered, doesn't reform easily. She questioned her judgment, her intuition, even her self-worth. But with time, the haze lifted. She remembered who she was before the proposal, before the ring, before the lie. In the end, she kept only one thing from that chapter: the box. Not as a souvenir, but as a reminder. That love, when built on deceit, is never truly love at all. It's performance, illusion. A promise made not from the heart, but from fear. Isabella didn't just walk away from an engagement. She walked away from a future that had never really belonged to her, and in doing so, she reclaimed something far more precious than a ring. She reclaimed herself. For most of their marriage, it seemed like nothing could break the bond between Jasmine and her husband Anthony. Friends envied their chemistry. Family praised their unity. They were the couple everyone looked up to, the ones who smiled through storms and held hands in silence. But beneath that polished exterior, a quiet suspicion had taken root. And once planted, doubt has a way of growing wild. Jasmine had noticed the changes slowly. Anthony's late work nights, the shift in his tone, the distant look in his eyes when she spoke. Nothing obvious, just whispers of something not quite right. She searched for excuses, convincing herself it was stress or fatigue. But in the stillness of the night, alone in their shared bed, the questions clawed at her. Was he still the man she married, or had someone else stolen his heart? Rather than confront him directly, Jasmine devised something different. A plan. Some would call it manipulative, others desperate. But to her, it was necessary. A love test, one that would strip away charm and routine, revealing the truth beneath. She created an alternate identity. Using a private social media account and a carefully crafted profile, she began to interact with him anonymously. It started with a simple message, disguised as a business inquiry. Harmless. Professional. But slowly, over the course of weeks, their exchanges deepened. He responded with interest, then with warmth. He flirted, he shared. He confided things Jasmine hadn't heard from him in years. Each message shattered her a little more. What began as a test quickly unraveled into heartbreak. Anthony wasn't just curious, he was emotionally invested. He described dreams and frustrations. He spoke of feeling misunderstood, of wanting escape. Jasmine watched, stunned, as her husband painted her as a stranger in his life. A woman who no longer saw him, who no longer cared. It was betrayal, Not the kind that left lipstick on collars or strange perfume on skin, but deeper, quieter, and perhaps more devastating. Still, she pressed on. She crafted conversations that mirrored the very issues in their marriage, observing whether he would recognize the parallels. He never did. Instead, he opened up more, unaware that the woman he was falling for all over again was the one he had already vowed to love. And then came the breaking point. He proposed a meeting. Jasmine stared at the message for hours. The man she lived with, the man who shared her bed, had just asked a stranger to meet him in person. Her heart pounded with betrayal, rage, and a strange curiosity. This was the moment she had feared, yet orchestrated. Now she had to decide. Would she reveal the truth and confront him? Or would she show up, mask in place, and watch her marriage burn in real time? Whatever choice she made, one thing was certain. The love test had become something else entirely. A ticking clock, a trap, and Jasmine had no idea what would be left once it snapped shut. The decision wasn't made lightly. Jasmine waited for days, torn between the comfort of pretending and the agony of knowing. But in the end, there was no going back. She chose the confrontation, not with words, not with rage, but with presence. She would meet him, and in doing so, she would force the mask to fall. His and hers. She arranged the meeting in a quiet cafe across town. Neutral ground, far from the places they once made memories. The time was set. She arrived early, watching the door from a corner table, her heart drumming with every tick of the clock. When Anthony finally walked in, her breath caught in her throat. He didn't notice her at first. He scanned the room, looking for a woman who didn't exist. Jasmine stayed seated, still as stone, letting the moment unfold. She wanted to see it. The exact instant when realization would strike. The look on his face when he saw her, not as the wife he once knew, but as the woman he had unknowingly betrayed. When their eyes finally met, time slowed. His smile faltered. Confusion passed like a shadow across his face, followed by recognition, and then horror. Jasmine didn't move, she didn't speak, she didn't need to. The silence between them screamed loud enough. Anthony sat down slowly, his hands trembling. The man who once made grand speeches of devotion now struggled to find words. He looked smaller than she remembered, not physically, but spiritually, diminished by his own choices. Jasmine watched him unravel. No accusation, no tears, just the weight of truth pressing down on them both. He tried to explain, to rewind the clock, to paint his actions as harmless curiosity. But Jasmine had already read too much, seen too much. The damage was done. What had begun as suspicion had evolved into a full collapse of trust. This wasn't just about flirtation. It was about a pattern, one that exposed the cracks in a marriage she thought was solid. Back home, the silence grew heavier. Anthony apologized. He swore it meant nothing. He begged for forgiveness. But Jasmine had moved past emotion. She stood at the threshold of a decision that would redefine her life. Stay and rebuild from ashes, or walk away and rebuild from truth. She chose truth. The marriage ended quietly. No explosive arguments, no messy scenes, just packed boxes and signed papers. Jasmine moved out not in sorrow, but in strength. The love test had broken her heart, yes, but it had also opened her eyes. In the months that followed, Jasmine began again. Therapy, long walks, journaling. Relearning the sound of her own voice, the scandal of her test became a story whispered among relatives, dissected by friends. But she didn't care, because while others judged the method, Jasmine lived the consequences. And in that aftermath, she found clarity. She didn't trap her husband to ruin him. She trapped him to reveal him. And what he chose when he thought she wasn't watching said everything. In the tapestry of life, few threads run as deeply as friendship. For Charlotte, that thread had always been wrapped tightly around one name, Sophia. They had met in college, two young women drawn together by laughter, heartbreak, and late-night confessions. Over the years, their bond grew strong, fortified by weddings, funerals, career milestones, and shared secrets. Charlotte had never questioned it, not once, until the day she uncovered the one secret that shattered everything. It began with something innocuous, a shared photo on social media. Charlotte was scrolling absent-mindedly one evening, pausing only when a familiar watch caught her attention. It was Liam's, her ex-husband's, unmistakable with its chipped leather band and custom engraving. The photo was taken at a rooftop bar she didn't recognize, but it wasn't the location that made her heart stop. It was the reflection in the window behind the group. Sophia and Liam, seated closely, smiling as if the world around them didn't matter. At first, she thought it had to be a coincidence. An old photo, maybe, or an accidental gathering. But doubt whispered louder. So Charlotte dug. She scrolled through tagged posts, traced likes and comments, followed digital breadcrumbs she never imagined she'd need to. And there it was, a trail of subtle hints, vague captions, and overlapping locations. It painted a picture she hadn't been ready to see. Sophia hadn't just stayed in touch with Anthony after the divorce. She had become entangled with him, quietly, carefully, and deceitfully. The betrayal hit harder than the one before. With Liam, the wound had been surgical, cold, and sharp. But this was emotional treason. Sophia had held her hand through the darkest moments of that unraveling, swearing loyalty while hiding complicity. Charlotte felt the air leave the room. She replayed memories in reverse. Nights Sophia had consoled her, moments she had offered advice, even times she'd asked probing questions that now seemed calculated. The trust, once blind, had been weaponized. Charlotte didn't just feel hurt, she felt used. But she didn't lash out, not immediately. Instead, she observed. In gatherings, Sophia's stories had changed. She mentioned new routines, new places, vague references to a mystery man. Charlotte knew now who that man was, and still she said nothing. She needed more than words. She needed confirmation, not from screens but from eyes. And so she waited for the perfect moment. A chance encounter that felt natural, a setting where masks might slip. It came on a Sunday brunch at a mutual friend's apartment. Charlotte arrived early. Sophia showed up later, glowing with a confidence that now seemed foreign. And when Liam texted Sophia mid-meal, Charlotte saw the name flash across the screen. Unfiltered, undeniable. The evidence was no longer digital. It was personal, tangible, a confirmation of everything Charlotte feared. Now, there was only one thing left to do: confront her, not to yell, not to demand apologies, but to speak the truth aloud and let the consequences fall where they may. Confrontation is rarely about anger. At its core, it's about clarity. For Charlotte, this moment had been quietly building, gathering weight like a storm behind closed doors. The evidence was irrefutable, but the emotion was harder to contain. Sophia had been more than a friend. She had been family, her confidant, her anchor, and now she stood exposed as the very source of Charlotte's deepest humiliation. The confrontation took place a week later, in a calm and calculated setting. Charlotte invited Sophia to a small park they both loved, nestled between rows of maple trees and shaded benches. It was a place marked by memories of trust. Charlotte chose it deliberately, knowing how contrast could amplify the truth. The betrayal would echo louder in a place once reserved for peace. Sophia arrived unsuspecting, her steps light, her smile unbothered. But Charlotte's expression didn't change. There were no warm greetings, no casual catch-ups, just a quiet moment, pregnant with tension, waiting to snap. Charlotte laid it out piece by piece. The photo, the messages, the reflection, the text notification. Each detail landed like a strike, deliberate and cold. Sophia's face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to something harder to define. Guilt, perhaps, or the shame of being seen clearly for the first time in too long. She tried to speak, but Charlotte didn't allow it. Not yet. This wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. Charlotte recounted the night Sophia had held her hand, whispering support while stealing what little was left of her trust. She spoke of the loneliness after the divorce, the aching need for loyalty, the hollow comfort of a friend's embrace, now known to be laced with deceit. There were no raised voices, no cruel insults, just a steady unraveling of the truth Sophia had worked so hard to bury. When Charlotte finally stopped, the silence returned. Sophia offered apologies, soft, fractured, too late. She claimed it hadn't started until after the separation. She insisted she hadn't meant to fall for him. But Charlotte had heard enough. She didn't need the reasons. She had seen the choices. She walked away that day without looking back. In the days that followed, the story spread through their social circle. Opinions were divided, but Charlotte didn't participate in the debate. She wasn't interested in public sympathy or social loyalty. Her healing had no audience. It was a private, deliberate act. Losing Sophia hurt more than losing Liam ever had. But in that loss, Charlotte found something she hadn't felt in months: self-respect. The kind that doesn't rely on others to validate your worth. The kind that grows in the ruins of betrayal and whispers, "You survived." She didn't just confront her best friend's betrayal. She conquered it. And in doing so, she finally closed the chapter that had been quietly breaking her for far too long. Please leave a comment and tell me which story you like the most. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.